The War in Heaven. Through the winter frost he was pulled, called through the boundless realms. His ebony skin and ivory soul lay bare to the chill of the snow in vast and limitless worlds. Falling, his brain and body were caught in a timeless suspension that consumed all he ever was. After his soul had been laid bare, the ether presented itself to him in the form of duality, good and evil, the eternal struggle between right and wrong. He felt a ringing in his ears and his skin twinge. The efforts of all of the living beings in every world to exercise the limits of morality bombarded his senses. He then heard a chorus of soft voices calling after him, pulling him towards the world that needed him. Their hymns rattled his frame in its fall, shaking him as if trying to awaken him desperately, calling him to action. Jeremie, Jeremie. Their voices seemed to cradle him until he felt the actual touch of a trio of winged women. Their majestic frames covered in what seemed to be very fine robes, gold jewelry and brown leather straps along their waists and midsections. Each of their voices consoled him, singing to him in verses of inspiration as hushed choirs. The woman, cradling his head in her embrace, looked down at him as if he were a lost child. Her voice stood out from the rest as she addressed his presence in this new world. Dear child, so lost, so pure, your part here has been earned by desperate men you may never know. Jeremie was confused, but he kept listening without interjection. One of the women crept along his body, which had been laid bare through the ether, and touched his chest. This touch stirred a light in him, and the woman nodded in agreement as they burst into a wind of yellow and white sparks. Jeremie was dropped into a room covered along the floor in warm waters. His head bumped the floor that was shallowly concealed by the humorous veil, and it gave him a brief sensation of pain. He got up from the ground, legs shaky and mind transfixed on the art on the walls. He reached out to touch it, and the room lit up. An explosion triggered from the carving, and time slowed nearly to a halt. Sound left, and that explosion flowed along Jeremie's fingers and arms, leading along the rest of his body. White hot sparks danced around him as they created clothes that now covered his naked frame. And as those bright sparks finished their path, Jeremie was blown back into a net of blackened sparks that encased him before erupting into a rain of ashes. Around him now, there were strange hymns being sung. The reverberating baritone voices shook his chest, while the sopranos hit his ears with a virulent ringing. He couldn't move for a while, forced to lay there and contemplate where he'd been led to now. He regained some movement in his neck and hips, twisting as he could to find his way to seeing what was around him. This time there were elaborate carvings in gold and marble of angels and monsters caught in their scornful embrace. Jeremie rotated and lay now on his stomach, poising himself to get up. His eyes met the base of a rather large statue that had been behind him. With every inch that he was able to move his head, more of the colossal statue was revealed to him. It was an angel, spewing fire and light from her weapon, and scorching a mighty beast with many wings and mouths. The display was detailed enough to cause Jeremie to study it in futility, trying to comprehend the time and effort put into it being constructed. Flashes of his welcoming party of glowing women bombarded him as he saw the angels in the hall. It was now all way too much for him to be quiet about, and his voice joined the chorus in stark contrast with his bellowing screams of confusion. Jeremie called everything into question, the place he'd been pulled into, the angels before him now, and even the clothes he was wearing. He owned these clothes, dark blue cotton sweater, joggers that matched, and his favorite white sneakers that had been sullied with mud and grass over the years. The things that bothered him were that he wasn't wearing these earlier, and he specifically remembered being naked in that other room. What was that light from before? He reached into his coarse hair and took a deep breath in. I need to figure out where I am. I have to be dreaming. Dark sparks rose from the ground and swirled in a loose funnel behind Jeremie. They became ashes and fit themselves in place behind the young man until they'd been assembled into the shape of a beautiful man. His skin was like smooth milk, kissed by the golden hues of honey. His hair was jet black, long and flowing. His eyes had a wonderful olive color, and his posture was perfect. He reached forward and grabbed Jeremie at the waist and shoulder. His head went forward as well, perching on Jeremie's shoulder. Are you confused, traveler? His voice was soft and welcoming, yet firm and confident. Jeremie wanted to move, but he couldn't seem to shake free of the man's grasp. He tried also to speak, but found his voice was lost, as long as he tried to protest the odd man's intrusion into his personal space. Jeremie found an answer to the man's question, and the man laughed. He let go of Jeremie before disappearing into the wind. The man becoming ashes, and those ashes becoming sparks. His laughs and whispers teased Jeremie's ears until every speck of dust had dissipated. The black sparks brushed the ground and lent their fire to sigils traced into the floor. The singing intensified and the ground became hot, boiling at the brim with molten rock and scorched marble. This was a landscape that Jeremie could not imagine. A harsh place that put his courage to the test with every step he had to make to avoid immolation. His steps and spirit gave way to more light that cut the flames in half. White beams parted smoke and gave way to clouds that took the place of the molten firmament. A golden cleft of ground grew from the clouds and revealed a man with skin kissed by coals and marbled a fine jewel. He had a stern look on his face, and he rose with a golden spear in his right hand. Wings erupted from his back, colored as a falcon's and ready for him to take flight. Make a choice. Fences are painful to perch on too long. This picture, an angel, gilded in onyx and gold, and the boy soaked in doubt, was seared into the eyes of the choir as they witnessed one of their promised channelers meeting his warrior spirits, aeons. The angel opened his arms and broadened his chest with his wings spread wide. Make a decision, Jeremie Smirnoff.